Hello, hello. Today will be small lecture concerning vineyards, wine and soil and rocks underlying vineyards. So we did examination in Tokay, the very famous place of production of wine. We went with my student, and this is the reason of this investigation. We were especially interested in transition of elements from rocks, soil to various elements of wines and to leaves and juice obtained during production of the wine, and at the end to the wine, how it's going. So there is a list of methods we used. Field method, so we did pits, did examination of geological profiles and sampling of soils and rocks, as well sampling of wine and various elements of wine bushes, roots and leaves, etc. So we use polarizing light microscopy for determination of mineral composition of rocks, and X-ray examination of some samples of rocks, and examination of wine and elements of wine bushes were made using ICP-MS method. Results are listed in tables and in diagrams. So this is area of Tokay. The flat area is surrounded by old volcano, mostly rhyolitic and andesitic. These volcanoes and the lavas of these volcanoes are primary material for formation of soils, very rich, very good for vineyards. And we went around and we collected samples. We visited many places, but there will be mostly about three sites, 3 outcrops, where we collected samples. So first is Erdebenie, rhyolitic tuffs laying on andesites, profile 1, and this is natural outcrop of tuffs, volcanic tuffs. This is these light rocks. Below there are andesites, some small pieces are blocks are there collected, and over these tuffs volcanic ashes, old, probably Miocenic of Miocene age, let's say about 40-30 million years old, is developed red soil, and this soil is the layer on which is are growing vineyards in Tokay. So this is drawing of general geology. So this is a layer of andesites. So over are tuffs, rhyolitic, and over is soil, is weathered tuff, red color, and at this place there is vineyard. There's vine bushes, so marked. And this is profile of of peat, this, and collection of samples devoted for examination. So there is a vineyard around, and my student Andrzej is making peat, is surrounded by visitors, and we collect samples. So it's profile of soil in the vineyard at the Benie, red brownish, developed on tuffs, volcanic tuffs. And volcanic tuffs laying under the soil are built mostly of volcanic glass. This is volcanic glass with characteristic structures, porous, and on the contact of grain of this volcanic glass, type of pumice, is developed soil. This red soil, it looks like this under the microscope. It's polarizing like microscopy. Polaroids in part parallel, and imagination is about 200 times. And second place is vineyard lapis, tufts laying on andesite, profile number 2. In nature, outcrop look like this. There are weathered andesites, there are tuffs, volcanic ashes, and not thick, rather thin layer of red soils. This is elevation, so soils are these red soils are in part eroded, and depressions are collected and are much thicker. And situation at this place look like this. We have andesite at the bottom, next again volcano tuffs, and red soil, as you see, thin at the top of elevation and much thicker at the small depressions. And there is localization of trench number 2, where we took samples starting 1 up to 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, devoted for examination. It's Andrzej is digging trench number 2, and next we will collect samples, and you see this red soil and small pieces of volcano tuffs, light volcano tuffs. Under the microscopy, these volcano tuffs are built mostly of volcano glass. This is this dark substance, and in this dark mass of andesitic character, there are plagioclases, crystals, monocrystals, very beautiful, showing twinings, albitic twinings, and very small plagioclases disseminated in this dark glass. This is structure of andesite present below tuffs and below red soil. And next, third locality, Vineyard Henie, there are redeposited lasses localized on the perlite, typical volcanic rock. Situation look like this. There's geological profile. There is perlite at the bottom, at the base, and over there are lasses, local lasses, and between we don't know exactly what is, but probably there are tuffs, volcanic tuffs. And vineyard is localized there, and in these less samples is localized trench number 3, and were collected samples. Again, we have profile of the wall of trench, and samples were taken from the top up to bottom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 systematically. Small pieces of perlite were examined using polarizing light microscopy, and we have volcanoglass. This is this substance. It's look like swimming substance. Yes, of course, it swam million years ago. It was a kind of lava, volcanic lava, and inside there are phenocrystals of various minerals. There are phenocrystals of quartz at this place. And this is a description of works we did in the field. Now something about works we did in a lab, in laboratory. So, samples of grappa juice, leaves taken from vineyard stems, and were dissolved in the were burned in the fire, and ash were dissolved in a mixture of acids, and this mixture of dissolved various ashes were devoted for ICP examination, and local wine from these three localities were examined using ICP-MS tool. So we were able to look for the migration of how look like migration of elements starting from these elements up to wine. And now I show you result of examination we did at one place, Erdőbényi, because we have all the results from all places, but it will be too long to show you. This is an example how we did this. I think it's very informative and useful for people working in vineyards. Erdőbényi, locality Erdőbényi. And now we have diagrams showing concentration of elements in samples of steams. This is brown, this is blue, in leaves this is brownish, in grappa juice this is yellowish color, and in wine. And what we see, for example, how look like concentration of calcium. Calcium is concentrated mostly in leaves, and not too much in grappa juice, and not too much in wine. And each of this part of diagram is possible explain and describe in details. Potassium is present mostly in steams, and leaves not too much. In grappa juice is again concentrated potassium, and in wine, in end of products, is not concentrated. Magnesium is well seen that is a reduction of the amount starting from steams up to wine, and phosphorus, sulfur, and concentration of elements in wine. How look like this is the scale. grams per kilogram, potassium, magnesium, phosphorus, sulfur, and we have next concentration of elements in samples of steam, aluminium, barium, chromium, copper, and we see that slightly bigger concentrations are of iron, manganese, sodium, as in steams, as in leaves, smaller in grappa. For example, sodium is present in grappa in bigger quantity, but in wine is reduced. And zinc, for example, is present in steams, maybe due to artificial fertilizers, we don't know because of what. It's 800 milligrams per kilogram, but in wine is reduced. Concentration of next elements, arsenium, bismuth, chromium, etc., etc. Each diagram, each part of diagram we may discuss. And what is important, that only some of elements are migrating to the wine. They are concentrated in roots, in stems, in leaves, in grappa juice, but after fermentation the amount of these elements is strongly reduced in the wine. If we look for this list. Next elements, very interesting, uranium, because uranium is practically absent in samples, as in rocks, soil, as well in steams, leaves and grappa juice, and of course in wine. Why it is important? Because we did examination of wines and rocks and elements of vineyards in Czech Republic. The vineyard is localized on granitic rocks containing uranium, and at the end of list of production, this uranium is passing in small amount, but is passing to the wine, and this wine is very famous, very known in the world, and probably part of vineyards where the wine bushes are growing on pegmatitic rocks will be removed from plantation, because probably uranium is taken from this part of granitic rocks. And next, we may look for the concentration of elements in the wine. In the Debanie still it's one site only, and we see that we have small amount of barium, bromium, sodium is present, silica is present in this wine, and very small amount of other beryllium is present, in slightly bigger amount. And next elements present in wine from Erdebanie, we have its other scale, not similar as, not identical as before, and we have traces of chromium, we have small concentration of traces of chromium in wine still, and we have cesium, gallium, lead, and titanium, tellurium, and wolframium present. And next elements present in the wine, it's very interesting that we have yttrium. It's the same scale, there are traces of traces, but it's slightly higher concentration of yttrium and zircon. in wine from Erdebenie. So production look like this. Private office producing very good Tokay wine, various kinds of wine, and general conclusions that this investigation of rocks underlaying vineyards, soils, as well as various elements of vine bushes, roots, stems, leaves, etc., grappa juice, may help understand the way of migration of elements from the rocks and soil into the wine, because as was shown on this presentation, the amount of the same element at various tested samples, it means in rocks, in soil, in stems, leaves, grappa juice and wine, is various. Sodium, for example, is various at various these samples, and other elements the same. So this means that process of preparation of wine and process of production of the wine is the process selecting elements taken by wines from underground materials, underground rocks and soil, and introducing these elements into the wine. Some elements are building leaves, some elements are present in stems and in grappa juice, but at the end other elements are present in wine. So all this process, natural, biological process and fermentation, is the process of selection of elements. One elements are left on the place, for example in grappa juice, but some elements are passing into the wine. And on sites localized, on vineyards localized on various rocks, at vineyards of various kinds, of various types, this process is various. It's not repeated at all places. It's not going the same way. Various kinds of vineyards select various elements. So this is probably the reason of various tests of wine and various prices at last of wine. So thank you for listening. It was only a small presentation showing our work in Tokay. This is Andrzej Broszkiewicz, and there are Hungarian friends, owners of vineyards. We are in small magazine, and we test local wine of very good quality. Thank you again, and see you next time.